Welcome back to our Introduction to Programming in Visual Basic for Applications. In this video, we will be looking at variables. This is Timmy. Timmy wants to keep the basketball, made of data, that is falling to the ground in front of him. Unfortunately for Timmy, I have zero artistic abilities, and therefore he is a stick figure with no hands and can't just catch the basketball himself. He needs something to catch the basketball, otherwise it will just bounce away and he will never see it again. Timmy needs a container, or a variable. Luckily for Timmy, his mum is a big fan of pasta, and so there are plenty of colanders around the house. He kicks one over and the basketball lands in it. He now has the basketball and can pull it out whenever he likes. This colander is like a variable. It holds this particular piece of data, the basketball, for later use. If Timmy wants, he can always tip the basketball out and use it to catch a different piece of data later. It will still be the same colander, just holding a different piece of data. Timmy is done with the basketball. It's a silly game when you have no hands anyway. Now he wants to catch some of the rain, a different type of data, falling from the sky instead. He looks down at the colander, which previously held the basketball so well, but it doesn't seem to be doing a very good job of holding the rain for some reason. Timmy obviously needs a different type of container, or different variable, to catch this type of data. While Timmy lives in a world where sadly he does not have a bucket, we as programmers are lucky that such limitations do not apply to us. We have a number of different variable types we can use to hold our data for us. While this is not an exhaustive list, the most common variables that you will be working with are string, Boolean, date, integer, long, and double. We will have a closer look at these shortly. In order to use a variable, the program needs to know that it exists. You can achieve this by defining the variable. To define a variable, you must use the command dim, D-I-M. You will then need to select a name for your variable and then advise what type of variable it is. This is always done at the start of your code block. You are then able to put data into your variable. This is done by writing the variable name, followed by an equal sign, and then the value you want to assign to your variable. The way you enter this is different for different types of data. For instance, strings are contained in quotation marks, while dates are flagged by the hash sign, or pound for those of us born before 1990. The variable can then be used just like a raw piece of data, pushed to the console as shown in the example, used in a calculation, added to another variable, trimmed down, etc. Let's take a look at Boolean variables. Boolean variables are the simplest part of any program. They exist in only two states, true or false. This can be effective for holding the result of tests or configuration options, though due to the small scope of the number of states, the use of Boolean variables is limited in many applications. As you can see here, a value can be entered directly into a Boolean variable using true or false. It will output as true or false only. A value can also be passed into the variable from an expression, formula, calculation, or another function as shown here. 10 is not less than 7, so the result of the calculation would be false, and that is stored to the variable. Integer variables are the simplest form of numerical variable available. This variable type is capable of holding whole numbers only and within the bounds of 2 bytes, approximate 32,000 positive to 32,000 negative. For many simple functions, such as a counter for loops or error events, etc., this is quite sufficient, but the limitations may make integer variable types unsuited for more complex or larger functions. The long variable type is quite similar to the integer variable insofar as it only contains whole numbers and has a range stretching equally into the positive and the negative. However, this range is substantially expanded to over 2.1 billion positive and negative. It is rare to exceed these bounds with whole numbers. This makes long variables suitable for any mathematical or numerical requirement where decimal values are not required. Single variables are, again, numeric. However, in this case, they are capable of containing decimal values. The value range is quite substantial, being expressed only as a mathematical index. The double is the largest numerical variable and is both decimal and unlimited for all practical purposes. If in doubt about how big it's going to be, use a double. String variables are somewhat free form insofar as they contain a string of characters rather than a value. The maximum length of this string of characters is quite expansive, with a theoretical maximum equivalent to 2 gigabytes, making the potential length over 2 million characters. While this variable type can have mathematical applications where converted, it is generally quite inefficient to do so. Date type variables contain dates and times. This is rather specialized usage, and it means that you will often find yourself producing code blocks without this variable type, though where date use is called for, they can be quite handy. Care should be taken, however, as under certain circumstances, date values will flip from a day, month, year to a month, day, year format due to the American origins of the software suite. As such, I personally use a string variable for holding dates wherever possible.